Today, I'm bringing you an interview I did with Steve Margolin of Ivy Road, the developers behind Wanderstop, on which he was the lead designer. We chatted about the game's themes a little bit, his involvement in delivering those games through the mechanics of the game, and as well as the response from the community and from critics. I hope you enjoy. And there we are. So thank you very much for joining me today, Steve. It's a pleasure to have you here chatting with me about Wanderstop, of course, the game that your team at Ivy Road just released, that you were part of. You are the lead designer at the studio, and then were in charge of the gameplay of Wanderstop. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. Thanks for having me. I've been at Ivy Road for over 2.5 years now, spending that time working primarily on Wanderstop. And the project itself and the studio itself has been going for a lot longer, 5, 7, 9. All are applicable numbers depending on who you talk to. Yeah, it's been a long time coming to this point, and it's really exciting to finally have the game out there.
Brilliant. No, I mean, again, I reviewed it for us here at the Gamer Social Club, and I absolutely adored my whole experience with the game. I found it very personally, touching and moving, and quite effective in many ways, and in aspects I didn't expect, which came through in both the way the game kind of presented itself through the gameplay, but then also, of course, the themes that it seemed to cover, which most people seem to gather, obviously, were sort of, in particular, things like burnout, whether it's sort of on a sort of more personal note, or maybe a larger kind of discussion about humanity and the world we live in nowadays, or even just applicable to the games industry, I guess, because that's a very big topic of conversation, has been for a few years now. So yeah, it feels one stuff feels very sort of on point and sort of on theme with regards to the rest of the world and things like that. Was that something that you think maybe drew a lot of people to the project, or like made it something that everybody at Ivy Road was sort of interested in making, feeling like, oh, we're kind of talking about something that is very important right now?
Yeah, a lot. Well, I don't want to speak for anyone.
Of
I
course,
know
yeah.
my personal approach was that I really wanted to work on something kind of different, something that had wider reach and wanted to like engage and say things. My background comes primarily from mobile games, which are
Mhm.
great and awesome, and I learned a lot, but they serve a very different purpose. And when I was doing that kind of game design work, it felt like I was making a product. Whereas on Wanderstop, it felt like I was making a game. Other people can call it art. I won't say that about my own work, but there, I was really attracted to the project by the strength of what it has going on, and the fact that it's a little bit different, the fact that it's sort of laid back, the fact that it's incredibly beautiful, and the idea of like making and creating a space for people to exist in and allow them to grapple with those difficult themes of burnout and stuff. That uh, that's what brought me to the project. And having talked with some people on the team, I think it's a general sentiment that like we're all very proud of what we made, and we're happy that Wanderstop is this unconventional darling of the game.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, yeah, unconventional darling. What a brilliant catch-all like way to describe Wonderstop. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, it really is though. I think because you've done, from my experience of playing it, I thought there were certain things that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
On many different sort of ways, whether it was talking about the narrative, the wonderful animations that like pick up these little nuanced details. I was caught literally almost taken aback very early on in the game when there's a moment when Alta, the main character, has finally arrived at the glade, as it were, the sort of where the Wonder Stop is,
Hmm.
with Goro, its owner, and he suggests something like, "Oh, well, why don't you take a break?" Something very normal that any one of us would be understanding of, and she reacts in sort of almost fury. And I noticed in her animation there was this wonderful little eye twitch going on, and I was absolutely struck by it, just purely by the fact I was like, that happens to me when I get stressed. I get a little quiver in the corner of my left eye, and I hate it when it happens because it means I'm too stressed. And to see that in her, I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like, oh, okay, wow, yeah, they know what they're doing, and they're tapping into all the little things, which was
yeah.
really nice to see. Um,
Shout out to the amazing strengths of our animation department.
yeah,
Aura, our lead animator, really set the bar high, and then everyone stepped up to meet it. Anna and Liz especially, our lead cinematic animator. So you can
yes,
thank her for that eye twitch. And then a lot of these were like storyboarded or blocked out by our concept artist Nat. Um, and the whole team just really came together and like using all elements at our disposal to convey the character and tell the story. It's awesome working with them every single day.
100%. Yes. Well done to them and their hard work. And as you say, to everybody on the team, because you really did seem to make the most of everything to kind of build these characters and make them their own. I mean, another moment I had later on from a different aspect, not to do with animation, but to do with sound design and the music, was meeting Gerald the Knight, the overly
Yes.
enthusiastic father, the sort of overbearing parent, who was a proper laugh out loud moment for me, and enjoying my conversation with him. But this one moment where, of course, his theme's playing in the background as he's chatting away, and then he suddenly seems to almost have like a brief moment where, like, oh, maybe he's having a moment of self-reflection, and the music just hard stops, and it's just him caught in a moment briefly, and then it just goes right back to it as he sort of shakes himself out of it and continues on. And again, little moments like that, which felt so personalized to each character. That's not a thing that happens again and again with everybody. Only Gerald had a moment like that with the music did a full kind of record scratch as he had to sort of
Yeah.
maybe deal with something for a minute and then brush it off and continue on being a chivalrous knight. And yeah, all those little tiny moments that ultimately could be lost in the blink of an eye, but when they're caught, like, can really drive home a feeling, a moment, like a theme. It's yeah, so much of that is here in Wanderstop, and I hope other people found that, and I hope you heard that from people when you were getting your feedback about the game.
Yeah, there's been so much love heaped on the music, especially
Mm-hmm.
Daniel C418 did an astounding job. I'm super excited to get my copy of the Woo soundtrack on vinyl. That's gonna be
Absolutely
perfect.
brilliant.
But yeah, the music, the art, the animations, everyone has connected deeply with all of these elements of the game, and it's always super rewarding to see. Um, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, couldn't agree more. And talking about obviously being a video game, of course, we have to talk about the gameplay, which is such an interesting, almost like puzzle to sort of unpack, as it were, just because you're playing a game where you want to tackle topics like, burnout, maybe even
mhm,
dealing with the idea of, like, who am I? Am I the person I thought I was? Should I
mhm.
continue to pursue this path that I always believed was my fate, or my dream, or whatever it might be? And these really sort of tough moments that people can have in their lives. Um, but you obviously were like, okay, we need to have the players do something in the game, but we also don't want it to be it's not going to be a hack and slash adventure where you're constantly, fighting your way through your emotions. Like, no, that undoes the whole premise of the game. We want people to recognize what's happening in the game and see it happening in themselves. How do you capture that? And so, yeah, ultimately, I guess the question is, why making tea?
Tea is awesome.
I mean,
Like,
you'll get no argument here.
uh, yeah, I'm a huge tea lover personally. Loose leaf is where it's at. I
Hmm.
really like um I don't know. Lots of people say, "Oh, there's ritual to it. Oh, it's meditative," and I think all of
Hmm.
that is true. But the part that really brings tea to the forefront of my mind and why I love it so much, and what I hope to try and convey in the game, is like tea is incredibly sensual, and that like it triggers all of your senses. Like a good cup of tea is warm to the touch. You can smell it. You can feel the steam rising up on your face. You hear the sound of the water in the kettle slowly rising up to a crescendo. It like, I don't know. And then of course all the different flavors and like you can hear it coming together. It's just a good cup of tea hits on all five senses and really grounds me in that moment of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Um, I love that, and I hope players in the game can feel at least a little bit of that too.
Yeah, yeah. I believe that a lot of people have done. I certainly did. I I found myself really enjoying the sort of going through the motions of preparing the tea, whether it was, going out into the garden area to um, place down, to sort of plant my flowers and gather the right ingredients, or then going inside and whizzing around this incredible sort of alchemical contraption to
Mhm,
to boil my tea and everything like that. And there were the times, of course, where the game will slow down, where you're not necessarily given anything to sort of focus on, whether it's, oh no, there's too many thorns, got to clear them out, or a character wants to talk to me, let's see what they have to say, or, of course, making tea for somebody who's made a request. And in those down moments, where I'm sure a lot of people found themselves sort of kind of going, well, what do I do with myself? Because they've never been presented with this sort of challenge in a game where it's, you've got all this time now to kind of do whatever you want. What do you want to do? I was making tea for Alta to go and then sit and ruminate and listen to her thoughts and, learn more about her as a character. Um, because I found that side of it was really then captured when you had her enjoying the tea herself. It was always fun to have the character reactions when you were successful in making what they asked for. But when you had Alta then enjoy a cuppa to herself on a park bench and reminisce or retell a story that may have not actually happened, but it made her feel that way about the moment, it was a real kind of uh, moment of introspection that you kind of get to be part of and maybe in turn kind of piggyback off of for yourself and like think like, yeah, what is something that I would think back to that is similar to what Alta may be going through right now. And I think that's a
yeah.
really, that's a really, really powerful, poignant and personal thing to touch on in a game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also want to throw out you can give Oro tea as well, and he has custom responses to each flavor. So just in case you want
Oh,
to
I'll have to go
diversify
back.
that, yeah,
Yeah,
go have fun with it. Everyone has thoughts on tea because tea is such a powerful force in real life
absolutely.
and the game.
Yes, yeah, 100%. Yep. It's certainly played its role in history and all sorts of things. So yeah, no, it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and Wanderstop keeps it that way as well, which I like. And yeah, and again, as you said, with being able to give tea to other characters and like that, and obviously Al to then enjoy it as well. Um, there's this sort of opportunity for everybody to be kind of giving you pearls of wisdom through their conversations, some of which are kind of nestled under layers of kind of, a bit of sort of obscurity, like speaking with the merchant woman who comes along, who just seems to
Mhm.
antagonize and belittle, and but ultimately by the end of it, you kind of get why she's like that, what she's trying to get across to Alta maybe, or you as the player. Um, and yeah, there were some really interesting interactions, and a lot of them didn't go the way I thought they were going to go, which, if anything, made them even better. Just because, when you predict something too often, it becomes a bit boring. But with Wanderstop,
Yeah,
I don't know if it was because of maybe the choices I had made with things like the teas that I presented them with. And again, obviously, you can speak more to that, Steve. But sometimes it felt as if maybe I had made a decision without realizing it, and that this had then set this conversation off on a different course entirely. Um, was that something that you guys were wanting to have in Wanderstop, or did you have it a bit more structured so that this character's story is going to follow this path to this end, regardless of the answers given or what tea they end up making for them, or did you give that more kind of variety in resolution?
it's it's more on the structured side.
Mm.
Characters have clear and defined arcs that they follow along. There is openness in the T responses, though.
Mhm.
Like Horo, obviously very dynamic and will respond to every flavor of tea you give him. But most characters have a a few acceptable things of like either like this is the tea I wanted, this is close to the tea I wanted, but I'll still accept it. This is not the tea I wanted, please remake it. And
Mhm.
this is terrible, I refuse.
Mhm.
Uh, and all of those are like kind of fun because they give opportunity for characters to express themselves in a way that is like uh, full of life, but also full of meaningful like game feedback. And so tying those two elements together and having characters like move through them in that way. And then it's also like uh, other characters are also open and responsive, like Bat Kid uh, puts in the request for book tea, and
Yes.
Bat Kid will respond depending on what books you throw in.
Oh,
Has
fantastic.
different things there too.
Oh,
So there
wow.
is like this liveliness to the characters and how they engage with the tea, even if their full arcs are
Mm.
preset by the narrative.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow. Even more reason to go back and replay it just to see other people's responses to different kind of teas you make them as not just with Borrow. That's fantastic. Um,
Mm.
I'll definitely have to go back because I had some favorite characters, but there are also ones I feel like I could go back to and be like, there's got to be more to you. Surely there's got to be some more secrets here, some other interesting insights that I can hopefully find. But yeah, I loved every conversation I had, and always the moment a new character came through, a new silhouette I didn't recognize across the way, it was an immediate just, oof, who is this? Let's go and find out. Which
Good.
is great fun. I loved meeting people. I guess that almost became alongside the tea making. It was very much meeting and getting to know people, which felt really nice in a game where you were given the time to do that, and it felt very kind of organic with the whole kind of flow of hello, would you like tea? Maybe yes, maybe no. Go away, come back a bit later. Yeah, there was a natural element. It didn't feel like a video game where it's um, I am the quest giver. I am going to, you know, offer you this quest for a reward, and I will then wait in this one location until you come back and fulfill that duty. Um,
Yes,
the
we worked
yeah.
hard to give each character sort of like interesting noticeable behavior traits
Mm,
so that when they mill about the shop, they do so in a way that reflects their character. Um, Demon Hunter uh, has some nervous energy. They're a little bit uncomfortable. They're filling out this new role, and that's conveyed in the narrative. And then I also worked hand in hand with our senior programmer, April, to sort of build out their personality traits and define their places. So to express the nervousness that Demon Hunter has, they have dedicated pace zones. So like
hmm
going into the level and being like, all right, this is like your smart object where you'll go here and you'll do this. And then so you'll notice that they go to the deck and they pace around a lot, trying to work out that
Yes.
nervous energy. Or if they do sit down in the shop, they go upstairs to the library where it's more calming to sit down versus
hmm
Gerald will be outside and will wander around. But when he sits down at the bottom of the shop and trying to set up different personality traits as reflected in the characters. Or like Ren is a like tough, like big, interesting, strong warrior character. He doesn't like to be inside. He doesn't like to sit down.
No.
So I don't think he ever enters the tea shop. So we explicitly like defined that like you can go talk to him and advance his stuff, but he wanders along the edge and makes use of some of the further out benches that a lot of
That's
the other
right.
characters don't touch on. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun to like define their behaviors to reflect and reinforce their character in that way.
Mm. Oh yeah, and yes, absolutely. Instead of them sort of just kind of on a set path coming into the shop, standing and waiting to be interacted with, and then leaving once dealt with, it really gave everything this sense of yeah, this organic, natural, real kind of life kind of energy to everything without it becoming too much. It all felt very um, sort of cohesive in that respect, which
Yes.
yeah, I really enjoyed. Um, and actually, yeah,
We
talking
worked
more.
hard so
Sorry.
that the Oh, yeah, my bad. We worked hard so that the clearing and the shop itself felt like real living, lived in spaces,
Hmm.
and a lot of that comes from the coziness and the aesthetics, but also sort of like the more verisimilitude we can give it to feeling like a real place, the more it creates that like sense of calm within the player of like, oh yeah, I do just want to kill some time here because there are like fun birds playing around outside and there are beautiful plants and there are like fun quirky characters who come and go, or I'm having a downtime moment reading a book and I look up and I see Ren out on a bench also having a downtime moment. Like it's these elements that make Wanderstop overall be a kind of place where you can sit in and you can breathe and you can live in it, and encouraging the player to have those moments to slow down as well as alter.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Speaking of, well, like talking about, yeah, your kind of experience playing the game, and obviously, the team making is the sort of kind of main mechanic of the game, and that it's the one thing that you will kind of go return back to obviously try and you learn more about it as it gets a bit more complicated with each stage and with each guest. But you do obviously then do the sort of uh, the caretaker aspect of the property as well, of the environment. So, clearing out the thorns and picking mushrooms and this sort of thing. And obviously, there's the sort of fun thing where using um, the broom, for example, to sweep up leaves, Alta will sort of attack them as if she were, still a warrior wielding her weapon. Which again, well, wonderful job, animation team, like lovely little touch there. But it did also then like spark a little thought in my mind where I was like, I do enjoy how the game doesn't have you actually play as Alta doing anything as far as what she used to do, her combat days, as it were. But was there ever a time where you wanted to maybe use an intro, like almost like just a brief opening scenario where the player might do something like that in order to create maybe like a contrast between what Wanderstop is really about, of course, and what Alta is uh, now further away from, or was the game always intended to just be like, no, no, you'll hear about what Alta was and what she did and everything like that, and you'll go into the game as you do in the actual release version of the game.
Yeah, there were some early discussions
Mm.
about building out more warrior elements, but we pretty quickly decided against it in terms of like just scope and team size and development timeline,
Mm.
but also in terms of like prepping the player for the kind of experience we wanted them to have. Um, there's a lot of assumptions that people make coming into a game that's billing itself as cozy. Um, and we figured that is kind of a heavy enough burden to try and bear, where we don't also want to create the expectation of an action game and then
Mm.
let people be disappointed when that doesn't come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. You're making two genres then at once and trying to kind of balance them both and make them both feel equal parts, and or whatever combination you want to feel like. But if one falters, then it's likely to also then impact the other to a certain degree, I imagine as well, whether in the production and development side or in the actual kind of user experience and gameplay side of it. Um, Obviously, talking about making the development of the game, and we talked about a lot of people's different roles and things like that. And you've mentioned the sort of size of the team. Given the subject matter of the game, was burnout something that you guys were then kind of very consciously aware of whilst making the game regarding yourselves and what you kind of were dealing with whilst in the development of Wanderstop? When we were setting up this meeting, for example, I very much appreciate the fact you keep to a good work-life balance. Hours of
Oh,
office hours
yeah,
is no work time. Right? Yeah, I was immediately like, yeah, respect to that. Absolutely, I love it. So yeah, was that something that kind of played on your minds at all whilst you were making the game? Or did it affect the team's approach to game development? Do you think?
for sure. It's definitely something we had on our mind and were aware of as we were going through the development process. It's pretty much impossible to exist in this industry without like some awareness of it.
Mm.
Um, That's the unfortunate reality of I love video games and I hate the video game industry. And so having things like firm boundaries on work-life balance help build that up. And Ivy Road has been really awesome in that regard. Definitely one of the best places I've worked um, in my career in terms of like I joined post COVID, so it was a fully remote studio at that point, and we haven't had really any difficulties being a remote first studio.
Mm.
Everybody like understands and commits to their working hours. We have our core meetings when there's the highest amount of overlap, and then we don't really bother them. Like I log off at 5 p.m. East Coast, which is 2 p.m. West Coast, where most of the rest of the team is located, and I just update my Slack status to East Coast end of day and I leave. And sometimes I'll still get messages, but people know not to expect a response
Mhm.
in that time. And that's been awesome. So, in terms of like company culture around that has been really strong. We also do like half day no meeting Fridays, which is
Mhm.
really nice to help like give people that break and sort of ease that transition in.
Mhm.
There's a lot that is really like focused on maintaining healthy work environments that I'm proud to have been a part of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Something worth cultivating up, for yourself and for others, and hopefully a message that can be spread throughout more of the industry. I think people, when they think of burnout, a lot of the time outside of working within the industry, and I mean, I'm speaking as an outsider to it. I don't work in game development yet, but I feel that a lot of people just construe that burnout just means lots of work. It doesn't actually take into consideration things like you just pointed out there, that the sort of the ability to walk away and know that at 5 o'clock, people may send you messages, but nothing is expected of you. You know, um, that level, that psychological change, that difference, that shift from I'm a 9 to 5 guy, but even after 5 o'clock, if my boss sends me a message, I'm still at work compared to
Yeah,
then
that
what you,
sucks. I hate when
yeah,
that happens.
yeah, like that's no way to live. You're on the clock at that point 24/7, and it's brutal. Like, yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And so, kudos to you and the team for doing that. And what a shame it is that that has to be said. you know, like this should be the norm for everybody. And I think there are plenty of people out there fighting the good fight regarding that. But this is not an industry that is sort of maybe not all of them are embracing it with open arms, shall we say, um,
Yeah,
necessarily.
you can definitely feel that video games are still a relatively young industry and are
Mm,
missing a lot of the industry protections that have been codified by work practices that you see in older industries, or the fact that there are very few unions that exist in this industry, and most of them don't really have the power to affect change. And all of that has created kind of a work environment that is um, oppressive and demanding. Um,
yeah.
and we do our best at Ivy Road to avoid that.
Well, and well done to you, because that is above all the most important thing. You know, the game and your work and your passion and involvement is uh, incredibly important. But what is paramount is your health, your well-being of you and everybody on the team. And yeah, I mean, I'm in a couple of discords for small indies and stuff like that, and on one or two occasions, I'll see them put up a post either just explaining to the people like, oh hey, I'm going to be taking a small break just for this reason, and the outpouring of support from fans is such a it's such an uplifting thing to see, and even the occasions when a developer might put up a poll or something like that to say like, hey, how would you guys feel if this thing I'm working on didn't happen until 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, and everybody is just sort of like, as long as you want, we're not here to make demands. You just do what you want, and we're here to cheer you on, and just make sure that you feel like somebody's here, excited and in your corner, because you're doing all this hard work. So it's if more people were aware of that, I think it would fix everything, but it would make things maybe a little bit more bearable, possibly.
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift over the past couple of years between like game makers and game players, and greater depth of understanding about that relationship, but also allowing like players to understand more of the dev process and some of the physical and mental tolls that it can take. And so it's awesome to see people responding to that and lowering the expectations all around to make this sustainable for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, I think Wanderstop's also a great company as far as that sort of outlook, and as far as the Ivy Road with the studio, but then the work itself. You know, we are now in an age where video games as a creative outlet, an art form, however you want to describe it, is now broader than it's ever been as far as the sort of the subject matter we tackle, the genres that we deal in, the scale, all manner of things. And so we're in this age now where, as you said, it's still very young, but it's also um, it's sort of accelerated due to its intrinsic tie to technology. You know,
Hmm.
games can
Hmm.
become more complex and deep and interesting just by sheer virtue of we could do more now than we could before. Um, whilst other mediums, of course, don't benefit from that directly in the same way. You know, film might get a little bit here and there, but you know, books are books for the most part, and you know, painting will always be painting, and that's
Right.
great. Though you know, they've achieved, they're at their you know their peak, their pinnacle. That you know, video games have still got a while to go, but the graph is sort of it's doing that brilliant sort of exponential thing where yeah, it just keeps getting quicker and you know becoming more accessible as well. I guess in that respect, you know, not just as a gameplay focus, which again, Wanderstop has a wonderful is as a plethora of accessibility options, and I can only imagine that was you know another high on the list priority for you as a team that was there because uh, even as someone who doesn't consider themselves um, you know in a sort of priority candidate for a lot of accessibility options, my go-to with every single game after being asked about brightness settings is where are the subtitles, can I make them bigger, you
Hmm.
know, and things like that. And you know, to being able to go through Wanderstop and see like lots of brilliant options, even just you know simple things like a reticule in the middle of the screen just to help people who might suffer from motion sickness and things like that. So small, so you know necessary, and executed simply and easily, and it means the world to so many people. I think when you do that, so you know, not even a question, but just a congrats to all of you as far as you know your work doing that. And you know, I guess actually, if anything, question was that there from the beginning, or was that something you had to kind of retroactively do when it came to getting QA involved and hearing back from them as far as like, oh, we could maybe adjust this element here? Like, I saw a few people talking about going inside the actual Wanderstop tea shop
Hmm.
and the camera being a much closer, and thus you know feeling that sense of like, oh, maybe I'm a little bit too close, a little bit too claustrophobic. How has it been? Has it been more organic, or was there much more of a thorough a through line of always be aware of what we could add as an accessibility option?
Yeah, there's definitely some like planning ahead of time that goes into accessibility options. And a lot of that I remember like sitting down and being like, well, what do we put in the options menu? And there's like some like all of that like there are base assumptions, but having to go through the checklist of sitting down like with our programming team, our UI team, and I guess yeah, myself as the designer and being like, well, this is what an options menu is expected to have.
Mm,
What do we actually need it to have? And some of them are like straightforward, like different types of graphic settings. And then also sitting down in terms of like what are our accessibility settings. And I felt pretty strongly from day one that we needed to have a dyslexia friendly font
mm-hmm.
because the game relies so much on text
Yes.
that I was like, if we don't do this, we've failed just straight up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very happy that we were able to do that. Open Dyslexic is great. The license is free. Everyone should put it in their game.
Great highlight. Great, yeah, brilliant shout out. You know, and
Yeah.
again, another great aspect of the games industry is the sharing of tools and you know in the way that people are just willing to be like, yeah, yeah, I've made this thing. Everyone use it, please, because it's there to benefit everyone. I've always enjoyed that kind of collaborative element of game design. It feels like, um,
Yes.
yeah,
And then you were mentioning the camera thing.
yeah,
That was something we actually didn't notice too much in our initial playtests. Didn't mention it either. It
mm,
was only after we did the full broad release and, you know, like 10, 15 times
oh yeah,
significantly many more people started playing it than we ever got to playtest with.
yeah,
And we saw those coming in and we were like, oh darn, you're right. So we released a patch last week that actually addresses that. And mean, like, enough players are talking about this, that this is a meaningful issue and would significantly improve everyone's experience. And we want everyone to have a good experience with the game and be able to just like play it to completion. So adding that in was not something we saw ahead of time, but was something that we have been able to respond to. And that's
mhm,
an important part of keeping like the game alive, but also keeping the game like responsive and open and again increasing it so everyone gets a chance to play.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, and I feel like as much as there's there's a lot of interesting different elements to the gameplay um, loop, if you want to call it that. Obviously, with the sort of the gathering of resources to make the tea, the ingredients for the tea, you know, keeping the glade organized and clean and just maintained, and then of course making the tea. Nothing feels um, overly thought like overly kind of complicated, if you know what I mean. Like nothing's extrapolated to too much of a degree where it's like, oh, what bit do I do next? I've forgotten how I do this now. I have to go and look at the book. And the wonderful thing is, of course, you have all these things like the books that help you, you know, the guidebook that will help you if you've forgotten anything, which is excellent to have. And then you have the book of answers in case you need any help at all with any of the actual tea recipes for the customers, which again, excellent feature for those of us who might struggle a little bit trying to work out like what do they mean? This is quite an esoteric way of talking about tea, and I don't really understand what they want from me. Um, but yeah, other than the moments where you have to figure out what do I want to put into this tea, everything else again feels very kind of accessible, approachable, um, whilst at the same time keeping the cozy aspect, the kind of imaginative, creative designs. You know, the apparatus used for making the tea. When you first see it, you're like, oh my goodness, like how on earth am I going to work this? And then you break it down as, oh, it's 4 or 5 quick and easy steps, and you know, you quite quickly get into almost a rhythm if you wanted to with it, um,
Hmm.
which I liked. And so did that take long to sort of nail down with the tea making elements, with that sort of process in particular? I can see how other parts of the game, such as the collecting of ingredients, um, you know, I could see where that may have come from, being like an idea of like, well, you know, tea, you grow it and then you have to harvest it, and so that could be part of the game. But with the tea making itself, that could have been a very simple process, I imagine, originally, if you wanted it to be just, you know, add all the ingredients, pour the water all in one place. You don't have to move around anywhere. Alta just does it at a little table somewhere, like a barista would. But
Right.
yeah, you know, like, was it always then this big contraption? Was it always designed this way with the steps around, going round on this revolving ladder? Um, yeah, take me through the design of the tea making set, as it were.
Yeah. The early designs of the team machine, everything was sort of just in one orb.
Mm,
Um, and you would add like different ingredients at different times. But we quickly found that that was like not as interesting, and also kind of was a weird use of the space. Um, the three orb design already existed by the time I joined the project.
mhm,
So a lot of my contributions to that were working through the steps of how you move through it and how each one behaves and making sure those interactions all made sense and smoothly flowed into one another. So being like I can't tell you the number of times we had conversations about how the ladder moves around the machine to make sure players were having the easiest time experiencing it, or spent literally a month on just the bellows and what
Oh,
that little like uh, mechanical interaction to heat the water was like, and what kind of feedback it gave the player, and whether it like made sense or was approachable or was too difficult, and having to tune that. And then things like the infuser, the lid on the infuser came in rather late in the process, and a lot of players um, it just sort of like solved an issue we were having of people inadvertently tossing things in when it wasn't ready, or trying to like move things in and out. So all of this came together in a really excellent way. And
mm,
yeah, we wanted that core central interaction to be not difficult, but like juicy,
mm,
interesting, something that you can do repeatedly and feel like you're both making progress at it, and also that like the ritual of real tea brewing has defined steps that you can be rewarded for mastering.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And as I said earlier, like I definitely found myself getting into that rhythm and enjoying the process. And as you said quite early on in our conversation about how tea is very much well known for being a sort of remedial, meditative kind of process, even just in the making of the tea, not even the partaking of it.
Mhm.
And that again certainly comes through in this. I certainly found it to be. I didn't find it difficult to sort of maneuver around at all. And again, going back to accessibility, of course, you did have the option to change the speed that the ladder moves around and things like that, which, again, I'm sure many people would have appreciated if it was just a case of it moves a little bit too quickly and the camera swings just a little bit too fast for me. So knock down a couple of notches and get that smooth, and enjoyable experience so that they can get the most out of it. Um,
Yeah.
well, I guess what's something I guess knowing how you handled things like, oh, any excess tea will just end up going into the machine that then creates these beautiful flowers on the side of it. This very kind of return to nature almost kind of approach to things.
Mhm.
Uh, Again, was it always important that sort of everything felt like it was a sort of a completed cycle? Everything, ended up somewhere that made sense and had a sort of a positive ending, and you didn't want people to be like, other than, of course, you can approach people and give them the wrong cup of tea and they won't want it. There's no kind of fail states in that respect in Wanderstop. I feel like it's just a case of like, if it doesn't work, it's fine, and everything else is kind of taken care of. Um,
Yes,
yeah.
that was very intentional.
Mm,
uh Like, the awesome thing about games is that, they're safe spaces to fail.
mm,
Fail states in games are not punished as hard as, fail states in real life. So, making a game without fail states, was not necessarily inverting that dynamic, but was a very intentional choice where we wanted to lean into the process of Wanderstop is a place that you visit, both the tea shop and the game, and it puts you in a very like specific mindset of experiencing this story of moving through um, some rather difficult emotions and challenging moments. And so we wanted to hold that tension and be like, the greatest challenge in the game comes from the questions and reflections it asks of both Alta and of the player. And so we don't want to overcomplicate or even distract that message by having theme making be like a crazy complex inventory management
mm,
simulation, right?
mm, mm,
So it's very intentional that the mechanics are um, thematic and loose in that way to reinforce that there is no fail state. Sometimes a character will say no thank you and then you can just turn it around, but there's pretty explicitly no timer. This isn't a diner dash type
mm.
situation where the challenge becomes doing things efficiently. In Wanderstop, we want it to be luxurious.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a waste of time if you enjoyed it in that respect.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I I get a lot from that in that respect. As somebody who, again, when playing this game, and very much immediately grasped onto the themes of burnout and things like that. Um, was then very surprised to have these moments where I really was sort of like, I feel like this game is speaking to me a lot about, yeah, the journey you take in life, and understanding like sometimes it's okay to let go of stuff, even if it may still hurt and maybe be difficult. Um, Sometimes you might need to self-reflect and realize that that person you thought you were or want to be isn't who you are, or isn't who you will be. And
Hmm.
that's okay. There's a lot of this sort of, it's very much a sort of game about, self-healing, it feels like, and yeah, sort of um, taking time to understand yourself, maybe even get to know yourself again, um, in a way. And a lot of that obviously comes through not just in the conversations you have, but I found it very much so with those moments that Alta will have, those narrative beats that occur when the environment sort of changes and stuff like that. And she'll have these what felt like almost conversations with her ego, and well, at
Yes.
least that's how it came to me. And I was just, and I could, there were so many times again when something was said there, and I'm like, I've said that to myself. I've definitely spoken to myself that way before, and it's sort of it's yeah, it's quite powerful and moving, and clearly comes from a place of sincerity from all of the people on the team. Because if it was just from one person's thoughts, if it was just the writer who felt this way, the gameplay wouldn't be able to match up to it. I think in that way, there wouldn't be a kind of cohesive element to it. Whilst Wanderstop, everything feeds back into the themes of the game in such a wonderful way and nuanced way that not everything is immediate. And I want to go back and try out other things now, as told me about, so I can see more of those little insights and learn even more from this game. And yeah, to have a game that can impart that much is incredibly powerful, to me. Um, and yeah, I guess as a sort of closing question, I know we've already talked a lot about people's sort of reactions to the game and things like that, but what was your maybe your personal hope, or maybe the team's hope, however you want to phrase it, for how the game was received? And then how do you feel the reality of that has been? Has it been the same thing, or were you surprised by the reaction from people and how they actually responded to the game?
My hope was always that people would like it. Uh, I There was definitely an understanding that this game is going to resonate more with some people than others, but seeing that like come to reality was kind of an interesting experience. Going through like the initial review scores, the differences between the people that gave us nines and tens and the peoples that gave us sixes and sevens were whether or not they could personally relate to Alta's struggle. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much exclusively. Like if you go back and look at that, it's a quirky little thing. We always knew this was going to happen, but seeing the reality of it is different. And then that continues to be reflected out even in like sort of user responses and seeing people online connect to it, or really not connect to it. There have been a couple like um, user reviews on Steam or backlogged and stuff that I've read that uh, are all valid in their critiques of the game, but I didn't realize that those critiques would so negatively impact their perception of it. There are a lot of people who are like, this game isn't actually a cozy game, which true.
Right,
But
yeah.
also, if what you wanted was a like idyllic productivity simulator, then I'm sorry we didn't do that, I
Yeah.
guess, So balancing that out has been good and interesting to watch happen. I'm in a place where I can now sort of look at it and be like, I think, I don't know. I don't want to tell people that like, oh, they're wrong or you don't get it is the defense of every poor artist, right? It's sort of like I have made a thing, and the audience is the final collaborator
Mm,
in this work. and some people are willing to meet us and meet Wanderstop where it is and pick it up and run with it, and some people aren't. You can't control that, and it's interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it speaks to, you know, different tastes. It speaks to the wonderful nature of this industry, and that it is now so broad in what it will tackle, in what it will approach as far as subject matter, and in how it will handle dealing with these topics and themes. And you know, it means that we get games like Wanderstop. It means we get other amazing games like, you know, I don't know, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and you know, things like that, or
Mm.
Mouthwashing or something. Games you would never think of actually existing, and then now we live in a day and age where you turn a corner and there's more of them, and they're all phenomenal, and they're all bringing new things to the table, in ways that often you just don't expect. And yeah, it speaks to your role, and you, the team at Ivy Road, and what you've made with Wanderstop, and uh, the indie scene, I guess, in particular, is you know, somewhere where I feel my heart very much lies as far as the gaming industry nowadays. Um, and yeah, I completely, yeah, the idea of the player being that final part of the collaborative experience and process. Um, yeah, if they didn't like it, that doesn't that invalidate anything about the game. It just means that they weren't one of the collaborators for that project ultimately. You know, that's all it means, and that's
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
for sure.
fantastic. Yeah,
It's yeah. Wanderstop is out. People seem to like it, and that's pretty cool.
exactly. couldn't ask for too much more really. But yeah, but no, this has been really lovely, Steve. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me about Wanderstop, and I hope I didn't have too many repeat questions from people that you've already chatted to already about it. Uh, but yeah, this has been great, just to pick a brain and have the opportunity to talk with someone involved in what is a, for me, really special game, and certainly one of the most standout experiences I've had this year thus far.
Uh, Thank you. Yeah. Um, Thanks for having me. Thanks for saying that. It's been really amazing.
No, it's been my pleasure. So thank you. I just want to take this quick opportunity to thank Steve again for chatting with me, and for thanking you, of course, for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy today's video, please consider leaving a like. And if you have any questions or feedback for us, please leave it in the comments below. If you would like to see more of our content, consider subscribing to the channel to get more guides, interviews, and our weekly news podcast. Until the next time, everybody, take care of each other and play some great games.